This is the City Council meeting, regular meeting for the City Council of Sammamish, dated of April 16th, 6:32 p.m. Welcome, everybody. Full house tonight. I'm excited. Will you call order?
Mayor Christy Malchow, Deputy Mayor Karen Moran,
Present.
Councilmember Tom Hornish,
Present.
Councilmember Jason Ritchie,
Present.
Councilmember Chris Ross,
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Romero Valderrama.
Present.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we excuse our mayor's absence tonight. She's out on a ship and unable to call in.
Second.
I like that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those against? And it passes. Thank you. Okay, next is the Pledge of Allegiance. How about Councilmember Ritchie?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to remove 2 items from consent.
Okay, and they are?
Number 8 and number 11.
Okay, moving 8 and 11. And we will then move them
New business.
to new business. Okay, so approval of agenda after moving 8 and 11 to new business. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Okay, next we have public comment. And if I kill these names, I apologize. But please correct me. Okay, so the first I have Michelle, and is it Byrne?
Fun.
Bunn.
Like the coffee maker, unfortunately, no relation. I understand I'm to hit the timer at some point.
I'm sorry.
What do I
Let
need
me-
to do here? This is my first shot at this.
Let me give you the whole spiel, which I was supposed to read, and I apologize. And I'm going to be very cautious on how I read this. I had my eyes dilated earlier today, so it'll be a little tough.
Okay.
This is an opportunity for the public to address the council for 3 minutes. And we will run the clock for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Limit per person or 5 minutes per person if representing a position of a recognized community organization.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Michelle Bunn. We have lived at 3437 207th Avenue Southeast for the past 25 years. I'm here tonight because twice in the last 2 months, my friend and I have barely escaped being hit by cars in metered pedestrian crosswalks. We are careful walkers. We wear these vests to be visible. We're never on our phones, and we keep our eyes on the cars. The first time we almost got hit was when a man blew through a stoplight at 228th. Our latest scare was this last Wednesday. My friend pressed the crosswalk button on Southeast 24th right next to Discovery Elementary. The flashing yellow lights illuminated, red flags clearly marked the crossing. An SUV stopped, allowing us to cross. So our vision was obstructed by the SUV, so we did not see the brown Tesla sedan race right past the other side of the stopped SUV. This car came within inches of hitting us. We think the female driver's Tesla was traveling in excess of 40 miles an hour, trying to make the green light in the left turn lane at 228th. The woman that nearly hit us was forced to stop because the light in the left turn lane had turned red. We dashed up the hill, hoping to photograph her license plate with our cell phones. However, she evaded us by immediately making a reckless right turn onto 228th from the left turn lane. A King County police officer contacted me in response to our close call and surveyed the school crosswalk. He feels adding flashing LED pavement lights and possibly a lane revision would help. The police officer also told me that Sammamish is the #1 city in the entire state of Washington for distracted driving. He is the person that suggested I talk to the Sammamish City Council. Our daughter-in-law had a dear friend. She was 8 months pregnant with a baby girl and was out for a morning jog. She was killed, along with her fetus, by that driver after he dozed off just for a few seconds. Lisa left behind her husband and a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old son. This heartbreaking story illustrates how quickly these things can happen. Summer is approaching. Kids, families, and concert goers will be heading to Pine Lake Park. I implore you to reevaluate the crosswalk at Discovery Elementary and the crosswalk at 228th, which leads into Pine Lake Park. Safety does have a price tag, but I feel it's worth the investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we've got previous council member Mark Cross.
My name is Mark Cross. I live at 247 208th Avenue Northeast in the city of Sammamish, in the Zakus Basin. I came and talked to you last week about water quality issues in the Zakus Basin. I had an opportunity to go and have a pretty good conversation with the Sammamish Water District yesterday. And I gave them a lot of the same information that I gave you, but the challenge that we have is that they feel, particularly Mr. Warren, that putting in sewer into our basin is not somehow economical, and so he only really wants to extend sewer lines where they're going to make enough money to pay back the water district. I told them, and I'll tell you, that they need to work seamlessly with the city of Sammamish, and that sometimes you're going to have pockets, not the whole 3,500 septic tanks, but pockets of them that need to be hooked to sewer, and you need to work with them. What I handed out now is the partnership pages from the draft Zakus Basin, and one of the things you can note from that draft page is that the water district is not one of those partners listed. Now, that's something that you're going to have to rectify and have some conversations with them about. I also am hoping that you will understand that my disappointment in hearing that Montage needs a $5 million detention fix. For those people who are interested in the storm drainage regs that you've now pushed to June, that gives you 5 million reasons when people come to you and say, oh, certainly you can allow us to develop on those steep slopes. Certainly we can do subdivisions that are in these critical areas with highly erodible soils. You've got 5 million reasons that that hasn't worked for the city, and you're going to have to take that whole subdivisions tax stream to the city for 20 years to do this one fix to their subdivision. I'm hoping the staff can find a cheaper solution, but it keeps you from actually improving Thompson Road, which is taking a bigger burden of traffic, and does need to have at least a sidewalk on one side and perhaps a climbing lane for the bicycles on the other. So I'm hoping that you can work with the Water District, that you can have a plan, at least schematically, for the development of that road that would include these future improvements along with the storm drainage improvements that are contained in the basin plan and are good work by the staff, but have it all laid out so that the water lines, the sewer lines, the storm drainage lines are all laid out so that they're efficient and don't get in each other's way as they develop. But we are an area, and as you do seek the source of the fecal coliform in our neighborhood, and you find that it's residential, you're going to need to work with the Water District to make sure that we can find a way to extend sewer up Thompson Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our list, we have Peyton Stever? Stever.
I sent a PowerPoint also. I guess while we wait for that to come up, I'll get started. My name is Peyton. I'm an employee at the Mail Post. I'm a graduate of East Lake High School. I've spoken to the council before. And I just wanted to talk to you about an idea that I had that I think is timely because the council is discussing the transportation master plan, and because everyone still has vivid memories of a couple months ago when snow shut down the entire city for a while. So what I wanted to propose is a gondola, and I've written articles about a gondola in Sammamish before. That one was more pie in the sky. This is a much more practical one. If you could go next slide. So I just want to start with what the characteristics of transportation in Sammamish have to be. So Sammamish has dispersed demand because of its suburban character. It has steep grade changes, which are very distinct compared to other cities. It has pinched right-of-ways. So if you look at 228, there are areas where it's right next to a cliff, and any further expansion is strictly limited by how the topography goes. The demand is very peak-focused, lots of commuters, lots of people going into and out of Seattle and Redmond on their commutes. And there are choke points that restrict the plateau, or getting on and off the plateau, and also removing within it. Next slide. So Metro's long-range plan includes several routes, some of which don't exist today, but they're all local routes. Local routes are sort of infrequent, low-priority routes that don't see much demand and are there mostly for coverage purposes. They also have included one commuter route. Sound Transit's done a little better for us, which is good since we're in the Sound Transit district and we're paying taxes for that. But they are proposing either a bus to Bothell, Utah Bothell eventually, or express bus or BRT that parallels the 269 bus from Issaquah to Overlake. Next slide. So this image right here is their BRT branding. I just want to say that there are other options. So the BRTs, it will require having a dedicated bus lane in Sound Transit's plans. For other BRTs, they always take lane space, which I don't think it would be particularly popular here. It would either require taking general purpose lanes directly from other traffic or expanding 228th and other roads. We can't do light rail or streetcars here because the hills inside Sammamish and to Sammamish are too steep. Light rail and streetcars are strictly limited to 6% grades or lower, and we have several grades that are much, much higher than that. You can put a light rail underground, as they're doing in Seattle, but that's extremely expensive, and we're unlikely to get political support for that. Next slide. Gondolas can go up and down the hills pretty easily. They're very frequent, and they're a lot cheaper than light rails. Next slide. So I proposed this route, which I'll hope you take a look at later. It covers a lot of the city. Next slide. It would connect to the light rail in Redmond and future light rail in Issaquah, if they'd like. Next slide. because it's frequent, it makes it very convenient for people to take it.
You can finish up.
Yeah, I believe I only have one more slide after this. So gondolas are slower than buses, but because they're more frequent, they are very convenient. And I hope that the council will consider looking at gondolas in the transit master plan and in general. Thank you.
Well, this is one of my favorites. So.
Thank you.
But I prefer the Italian kind.
Okay, next on our list is Scott Jarvis.
Hello, I'm Scott Jarvis, 3825 Issaquah Pine Lake Road, Southeast. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Moran. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council this evening. For a bit of history, my family has been here in what is now the city of Sammamish for 47 years. We maintain a horse farm on property that has been farmed consistently since the late 1800s. We have seen this area grow from a rural community with only a few neighborhoods to the urban, suburban mixed community that it is today. We're proud of the city of Sammamish and proud of what it's become. 5 of 7 Jarvis families remain within the city, 4 on the farm itself within the Meadowleaf community. As a family, we specifically asked to have our property included in the formation of Sammamish back in 1999. We actively participated at inception to help plan for its future. In recent years, Sammamish has consistently been one of the best-run cities in the country. It is a wonderful, and you are to be commended for the leadership that you provide. It's a wonderful city and has naturally attracted many who wished to live and raise their family here. We started working on the process of building the 113-home community of Meadowleaf over 5 years ago in 2014. In that time, we've seen a lot of new faces in the staff and even on city council. We've had some neighbors fight the change new development brings. In the end, city staff focus on this project has been very, very thorough. We appreciate the time and effort it takes to ensure all regulations are adhered to and followed. We thank the staff for their hard work, clear focus, and timely responses. While it's not always easy to pick up a project that you didn't start, they were quick studies and have worked diligently to get through the many hurdles it takes to ensure all is finally ready for approval. This is the last time I hope to come before you asking for approval, as this is the final plat for the second and smallest phase of Meadowleaf. I want to personally thank each of you for your service to the city. I served as planning commissioner for 4 years, 2 as its chair. I know yours is a thankless job at times and that you have to listen to a lot of complaints along the way. Thank you all again for your contribution to this great city.
Thank you. Next on our list is Deb Sogi.
Deb, excuse me, Deb Sogi, Sammamish Chamber of Commerce, 704 228th Avenue, Northeast Sammamish. I haven't given you an update in a long time, so I thought I would do that. What have we been doing this winter? Well, we'll tell you. Members of our chamber attended a chamber day in Olympia in February. It was good to meet with groups and legislators and Senator Mullet, and we recommend, from what we heard, that the council consider furthering their meetings and relationship building with regional partners whenever possible. And the reason why I say that is when we were there, we heard over and over in groups that Sammamish is not participating or working. I don't know that that's true. I'm just saying what I heard. All of our neighbors are experiencing the same issues in traffic and all over the city, the borders, the way it's getting backed up, and it is not working well to not work with our regional partners because they all want to find solutions for the same problem we have, our regional traffic conditions. So that's just a note I'm passing on to you. Sammamish Chamber of Commerce has a new task force, and we're gathering data concerning economics in our city to coincide with the city's goal of financial sustainability. We love that goal. The data that we collected from a report by Lyman Howard in 2017 to Sammamish indicated that primarily we're dependent on property taxes and that we have the lowest amount of sales tax revenue coming into our city than any other city, while our population actually is over Redmond and beats Issaquah and Mercer Island. So we're really a little concerned about the burden that's put on property owners, and that's what we're trying to gather data on. We recognize that it is critical to balance our revenue by developing a business presence so that our future costs for infrastructure and other improvements not just be on the burden of property taxpayers, our residents. Our only hope is to increase sales taxes is dependent on the town center. We have stagnated the process of town center and the progress, sales tax dollars, and the delays are costing our city. As development costs continue to increase over time, a fear that we lose future businesses like Ace Hardware and other services, small businesses we want, is becoming bigger and bigger. Big box chain stores may be all that we can have in the town center. Do we want that? I don't think so. So just last week, we spoke with a local Sammamish resident about opening a bagel cafe in Sammamish. He found Regency centers to be uncooperative, some spaces cost prohibitive, and no one interested because they were a first-time business. He took his business to Seattle and found a retail space that worked. We need more competition for Regency and more options for small businesses, which we will be losing if there are more delays with Town Center. So I beg you, please, let the progress go on so we can have good sales taxes in this city since we're the lowest in the region and help take the burden off property owners. Now I have something lighter to talk about, the farmers market. So the farmers market is opening on May 8th and lasting till September 25th. And I've been working over the winter very hard on the vendors, collecting all the information we need. And I'm ahead of the game on entertainers. We have a lot of entertainment scheduled. I've got 2 weeks left to schedule, and that's it. And they're good local entertainers. The first day we'll have Glass House Dance there performing, and we'll have the double bars, which everybody loves, to start out the market. I ask you all, you're all invited to come to the grand opening at 4 o'clock on the 8th, and we'll do some ribbon cuttings. This year, we do have some new vendors. We have a new farmer that's bringing meat, and we have all kinds of meat. And then we have a lot of condiments, like things you can put on your meat. We have other bakeries coming with cookies and all kinds of extra things. And we have our kids' activities fully planned for the whole season. So we're doing well. And we ask everybody in this room to please attend. It's going to be Wednesdays from 4 to 8. And we're really looking forward to a fun season. Thank you, City, for the opportunity of running it by the Sammamish Chamber. That's all.
Karen? So, Deb? I was going to see, can we get a copy of your written copy so that we can reflect upon that? Because there's similar things that you've said that resonate.
I'll send it to you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next on the list is Harry Shedd.
Harry Shedd, 2313 Sahalee Drive East here in Sammamish. Deputy Mayor, council members, Mr. City Manager, I want to say a special thanks to you for filling a great time here and great need in the city. We wish you well as you return to Bend, and we wish you well in your first golf tournament, too. I just want to say a couple of words this evening about the Puget Sound Regional Council, and specifically their 2050 plan, the Vision 2050 plan. I want to congratulate you, first of all, and I hope it wasn't item 8 or 11 that was removed from the consent agenda, because I want to see that go forward. It's a great piece of paper. It's timely for the council. It belongs there as a city. We need to get our 2 cents worth in and start now the process that will be somewhat long before they arrive at assignments to each city as to new growth targets and everything that goes with it. So they're writing a 2050 plan because they've seen great increase in the future of the region. They see a 1.8 million new people by 2050 and 1.2 million new jobs. So their job is to somehow help in the planning, long-range planning, for helping us get through that process. So I'm thankful to see they gave 3 options to the public at large as well as to cities, and they encouraged us all to participate by April 29th. You can find them online if you wanted to participate. Just look for the PSRC Vision 2050, and you'll get all the information you need. There's a lot of it. For the last 2 months at Citizens for Sammamish, both our March and our April meeting, we've been discussing this subject in great detail yesterday, as we had good information there from people that have been with the PSRC before it was PSRC, and 2 ex-mayors that were there from the start. And of course, you'll remember those days, Deputy Mayor, as she nods. There's been a lot going on. A lot changes coming. And the question is, can we maintain our beautification in our small town bedroom community here in the years to come? We can. And we'll do it the same way you did before. The last allocation that we got some years ago was quite small compared to the other cities. We'd like to see that happen again. Every reason to believe that it will happen, but it will require all the cities putting their heads together before the assignments to agree on the factors. And quite a bit of agreement involved. That executive committee is 32 people on that executive committee. There are a lot of people involved in this, so it is a long range covering 4 counties and some 80 cities. So we encourage you to go ahead with that letter. I hope it doesn't get changed. Notify the council and call on the people and groups here in the city to help, because we're anxious to do that. And when you're ready, when our representative is ready to go forward, we're happy to send endorsements to go with them at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the last I have on this list is Mary Wichter.
Hello, my name is Mary Wichter, and I live at 408 208th Avenue Northeast in Sammamish. So I'm talking on stormwater, and you can see there in the photo, as new homes build, they have easements and access and stormwater infrastructure that gets given over to the city, and then the city maintains it and updates it for existing and future growth. I've been talking a couple years ago with former Mayor Don Gerand, and he had said, but Mary, we don't want stormwater given to us. It's a burden. So I wanted to let you know that city does have the responsibility for stormwater. It's one of the 3 wet utilities. So right after that, in a city council packet, there was a major subdivision development that came through, and it actually has the words in there on your drainage easements. It talks about the burdened lot. So the burdened lot actually is the stormwater lot or whoever owns it. So it actually is called burdened. So I thought that was sort of ironic and funny. I also wanted to let you know that King County first recommended drainage guidelines in 1969. Here is part of the Sahalli Plat. It was developed originally by Par Golf in 1970 and 1974. And because King County had the guidelines, it says things like there's a 2.5-foot sidelines and 5-foot front and backyards that are for easements, for drainage and utilities to protect, for the protection of public health and welfare. And then this is the 3rd phase of Sahalli in 1977, and it also talks about easements for the governing municipality to enter for the protection of the public health and welfare. And the developer here, Westmark, They did Sahalli 3 in 1977 when King County first required drainage. The same developer also built Sahalli Hills 1, which has now been named Heritage Hills. And Tom Odell, past council member, used to talk about that they have a central park, which is used for stormwater when it's wet, and it's a good design. So those developments happened along, and I wanted to let you know that Sahalli does have storm drainage. However, there was no developer for Inglewood back in 1889 when Inglewood used to be a town, nor in Tamarack in 1964 when it was simply platted by the tax assessor. So old plats are defined as historic plats by cities, by our city, in 5 emergency surface water ordinances between 2014 and 2016. We do have roadside ditches which convey stormwater, and there are culverts under driveways or roads as they're needed. But we've been constantly growing by new families. It's called infill development. It happens lot by lot, piecemeal at a time, not in a coordinated manner. And each time there's a new single-family home, they either tight line a pipe to an existing ditch, or they use low-impact development techniques before they were called that, which they infiltrate and they disperse the water. But because we live on a steep hill and the soils are infiltrative, it's not supposed to be feasible in those soils, and we have landslide hazard areas. So you have sewers some places, but you also have septic with just putting water into the ground, and you have storm water going in the ground. And that means that water finds the easiest path downhill, and downstream properties get flooded and they become burdened. So if the city doesn't have infrastructure that they get given over, you're burdening the downhill property owners. So as the city permits growth, you really have to provide adequate facilities by the time of occupancy. That's part of the GMA, is you're supposed to encourage growth where adequate facilities either exist, including water, sewer, and storm, or they can be efficiently provided. And if they're not provided in 10, 15 years, that's not efficient. And you may remember the other day I had you do the cluster of private roads map. And Sahalli is a cluster of private roads, but I've just gone through and showed you that they do have drainage. And the Inglewood plat, half of it still has private roads, the other half has public where some stormwater was done. And all of Tamarack is private roads, but we pay an awful lot in taxes. So I wanted to let you know that Inglewood and Tamarack are specifically unique places. They are historic plats. They need to have adequate stormwater facilities for the existing growth that is already built, because the occupancy permits have already been given, plus any future growth, because you're going to have people redeveloping, and because you have to let people develop either by a permit that gets approved or a reasonable use. You are having growth in those areas. And that all happens when there's a moratorium everywhere else in the city and when there's a water moratorium, because those existing lots already are there. So thank you for listening.
Mary, you impress me every time. You always get it in. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the council? 3 minutes, give your name and address for the record.
Good evening, City Council. My name, Paul Stickney, 22626 Northeast Inglewood Hill Road, and I have a hodgepodge of just a couple things. In regards to former council member Cross and Mary Wichter talking about the fecal coliform counts from potential septic systems in the Zaccoos Creek, odds are you all know this, but because I've been in real estate for over 40 years, I'll share a couple things. The King County Health keeps track of septic system failures. And sometimes where those failures are located can be very telling, and the type of failure, and is fairly inexpensive information. Second, for about the last 7 or 8 years, when a home sells in King County that's on a septic, there is a highly, I don't know if the word would be sophisticated, but there's a lot of detail that goes into a King County transfer form on a septic system that evaluates all 3 parts of the system, and those are on record. So there may be information and any, trend. The thing I'm trying to say is it's fairly easy and low-cost information to get that may start to inform on that issue. Second thing, at the Citizens for Sammamish last night, Councilmember Ross and Valderrama were there. I don't want to open a can of worms, but you might chat with them about a lot of interesting topics that the speaker, Lee Harrow, who has a lot of information about this, talked about how V over C in cities and not having VOC for flexibility, and also talked about something that sort of perked my ears up, but you got to talk to your council peers because I'm not an expert at this. He talked about there may be a way to look at, instead of concurrency within city limits itself, you can look at a little bit larger area, as Councilmember Valderrama talked about. And I can't recall whether Mr. Harrow mentioned Renton, but there is an interesting option, and we do have issues in a little bit larger area. So I just found that an interesting comment. And something I found interesting too, because I'd heard about this, and I'm going to sum it up because I don't have too much time. Before the GMA in 1990, King County had a metropolitan growth line. And Sammamish was in that area, I believe, from roughly the early 1980s. So that line wasn't put upon us in 1999. It was there earlier. And that's the reason King County put so much up here, and they didn't leave a lot of money here. That's a whole other topic. But that's the reason housing supplies are a wee bit out of whack, is because they planned over such a large area, and when we were carved out, that's an issue. Anyway, some more on that at some other meetings. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Stickney. Is there anybody else? Great, thank you. Okay, next, council, we've got our consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, and that is with the removal of 8 and 11. And so all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Excellent. We're going to move right along here, guys. So that takes us to,
Do you want to, for the public, read what was just on the consent agenda? Because I think some of the people here were waiting for some of those items.
does everybody have it was just about everything. Does everybody have a copy of the agenda and what was on it?
I don't.
Okay, I think they're good.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to take us to, pardon? Okay, that's going to take us to unfinished business or new business.
There's no new business. We do number 8.
Yep, number 8. And Tom, you want to lead off on that?
I certainly will. I was just hoping to get a better understanding and delineation of the different pieces of the Fair and Pierce contract, and I have received more information and now was able to digest it. Roughly about 600 is for the concurrency that Fair and Pierce did, a little bit less, and about 400, or maybe a little bit less, is for the TMP, and that's all I really needed. So with that, I would move to authorize the city manager to approve the contract amendment in the amount of $21,435 for the TMP and to administer a management reserve of $50,000.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Motion goes. Approved. And number 11, Tom, again, you want to start off?
Sure, and I've actually provided some additional language, but what I was hoping to do was and there was some language in our agenda bill with a proposed letter, which I thought was very good. I'm still fully supportive of this growth-oriented or transit-oriented growth alternative, but what I wanted to kind of clarify and make sure was that just because we're supporting transit-oriented growth in other areas, that we don't lose transit inside of Sammamish. So I did try to add some language there. I think, Larry, you have a proposal or alternative with that language. Is that correct?
Yes, and each of the counselors have a copy of the letter with that proposed amendment to it at your place, so you can take a look at that and see if you're in agreement.
Move to adopt the,
Oh, I do have one. Okay, I have one question, and so Councilmember Stewart.
I think if we are going to add language, which I am always in favor of adding language about more transit, I would like to go a little bit further and say that we would like to see that as the light rail comes online, that those bus routes be reallocated to the areas that don't have the high capacity transit to help move people to those high capacity transit options. So if we could just make that language a little bit more, not that we hope to not have less, but that we actually hope to have more, that more people are going to continue to move in the region, so we actually do need more transit, and there will be rail coming online, which means there will be bus routes that become available. Those bus routes should go to the areas where there aren't rail lines.
I would support that.
And I'll leave it to our staff to do their magic with the wording, because they're way better at it than we are.
This out by the 29th, though, so it's got to get done now.
Tom, does that work within what you were looking at?
It does. I kind of like it. I wish we had specific language, but the concept I really like. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would go so far as to move that we approve this letter with that concept in mind, trusting that the staff will write it in a way that we're okay, because we don't have another meeting before the 29th, and we do need to get this submitted. So unless any of the council members have any specific concerns, I move that we approve this letter pending that change, and that way we can put it forward to the Growth Management Planning Board.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. Passes.
Is that it? Are we done? Because I have one more item.
Okay, so did you, for what, for new business?
Yeah, you could call it new business.
Where do you want- Okay, so Councilmember Stewart.
Well, I have some new business. I've got something here. I've got a couple of somethings here.
Is it edible?
For those of you who don't know, this is our interim city manager's last council meeting. Larry, you came in at a very challenging time. You are our third city manager, and when you came in, 4 months, I think. We've had a lot going on. We've had a lot of turmoil. You have been, from all accounts that I've heard from staff, you have been an exceptional leader for our staff. You have been an incredible mentor, I would say, and you've provided, for the council, you have provided us with, I think, great leadership and guidance. And for that, I would like to say a very heartfelt thank you. And that while we are looking forward to our new city manager, we are going to miss you very much. And so thank you very much. Now I'm going to get a little less serious. So we've got a couple of gifts here for you. In this one, we have your official 5-year pin. Now, I realize you've only been here a few months, but I think you feel like it's been 5 years. So we think that you have earned that. So here, and an official Sammamish pencil, because no one should leave town without a pencil. So we've got that for you. And then this one here is from Jason and I. We know that while you've been here, you haven't been able to go and play a lot of golf, and so you probably need to work on your golf game. And so we bought you some golf balls, but these are very special golf balls. I think they're going to help you. I'm not sure how well you are. You drive and how long you can drive the ball. But I think you will find, if you open the box in here, that these balls will help you drive very, very far. And if you wouldn't mind opening it up and sharing it with some folks, I think...
I'm afraid they may be exploding.
I promise there will be no explosions.
Thank you. Actually, I've run out of these since I've been up here.
You got to open the box. You got to open the box.
Each of these have someone's picture on them. And there actually have been moments that the ones I have actually hit have had your names on. Thank you very much. As I have indicated to you, it has been my pleasure to serve this community. I think that you have nothing but great days ahead, but like all cities, you have a lot of challenges still to face, but I have no doubt that you will face those. So again, I thank you and the community for your patience and allowing me to serve you over these last 8 months. It has been an experience. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
You truly will be greatly missed.
I know you were a little worried about what my new business was. I hope that was okay.
I always have to wonder. Okay, so, and we may even try to get out of here at a reasonable time tonight, so this might work out really well. Okay, next we've got council reports, and we have council reports by Mayor Melchow, Mayor Ritchie. Oh, Mayor Ritchie, sorry, Councilmember Ritchie, there you go. And so I don't know if either, I read both of them, I don't know if either of them have anything they need to bring forward for a vote of the council. I didn't see anything.
Can I just read mine very briefly, take 2 minutes to read it? Is that okay, given how quickly we're moving along? Would you mind?
Actually, it's not really a report.
Sorry?
Actually, I didn't see it as a council report per se. So,
It's under reports.
I mean, I saw it more as an opinion than a sort of thing, so.
Okay, I'll defer to the chair.
I-
Understood.
Can we appeal that? I think that council members are allowed to bring forth reports. I don't think we should be shutting
Well,
that
a
down.
council report, he can report it without reading it. He can summarize it.
Yeah. There's no reason why
Okay,
anyone
why
can't
don't
speak to the
we,
report.
can you summarize it for us?
Thank you for the opportunity. Part of some of the work I've been doing, I serve on the Sammamish Chamber of Commerce, and several of us on the chamber have been meeting regularly, as Deb Sogi spoke about. Part of what we're hoping to achieve is an economic development plan or a path forward. It's one thing to put a goal out there, but part of the chamber is actually implementing some of the goals that we talked about in our goal planning, things we've talked about recently, kind of pushed by the interim city manager. And I think that there's a couple things here I just encourage you to read, encourage you to think about over the next few weeks as we figure out what it actually means to develop an economic development plan. What does that look like? I'd encourage the council members to do the research, meet with the chamber, come to a chamber meeting. We're going to have our city manager be speaking at our chamber event on Thursday, 11:15, I believe, at the Sahali Country Club. I think there's still seats available, so that'd be great. But I just want us to try to keep this in mind. This is, to me, it's something that, it's a core function that we're missing as a city. And I would hope that we can come up with our own ideas. I've listed a couple of mine as to what I think we can do. My vet over in Klahani pays an inordinate amount of money for rent for a little small vet office. And I think the lack of competition, commercial rent-wise, is stifling business. We could talk about sales tax. I don't want to linger, but I just wanted to include those things here and the kinds of things we could do moving forward, including potentially having an economic development coordinator position within the city to act as that liaison between government and private industry and private businesses to help us figure out where those points are and to work with our chamber and help us create a little bit more economic, business-friendly community within Sammamish. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have got discussion on the federal.
Well, there are other council reports.
I didn't
No,
see
just
any
a
on
goal.
there. Okay.
So On my council reports, we had this week the Eastside Fire and Rescue meeting, of which Karen Moran attended with myself. Of major significance that came out was the PFOS and PFAD report came out. It's a data-driven report that was given out. Next month, there will be an analysis of it that will be shared with the community as to where the different sources are and implications of it. And so that'll be coming forth and we'll be reporting on it. Yesterday, as was mentioned, we had the Citizens for Sammamish meeting. As was mentioned, Lee Herod was there talking about PSRC, its origins, as well as the implications of it to Sammamish going forward, sanctions that can be taken against the city, as well as things that can be done with the city to improve, and as was cited briefly there, working in the region and trying to look at other mechanisms like we had mentioned previously. SEPA to work with the region was discussed out there, and with me was Council Member Ross on that. Also earlier this month, on the 3rd, Central Washington University and the Rotary International put on an event for peace speakers where we brought the Supreme Court Justice Stephen Gonzalez to speak on freedom and the rule of law. There'll be a series that'll be twice a year going forward. Very successful. The president of CWU, Jim Galdino, also came in. It was well attended, well received. And the final component of that was Eastside Catholic presented the first peace poll that they're putting up of a series that are going to be coming up on the city. The Y and Central Washington will be doing others and mentioning our partnerships that we have there. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Ross, do you have? I was going to go on later, but Councilmember Ross, do you have?
Yeah, I just want to touch briefly on something that our finance team has recently submitted. The biannual budget for consideration for the Government Finance Officers Association, it's GFOA. And it's quite an honor that the city receives for this recognition. They received recognition 2 years ago in the biannual budget recognition, and only 33 out of 281 cities have been recognized as such. That's 12%. So I just want to acknowledge the team, wish them very well in this submission, and we should all be very proud of the finance team at Sammamish.
That's great.
I would also indicate if anyone has a chance to read through that budget, that is a wealth of information in there, not only about city finances, but about the community as well. So it's very well presented.
That's great. Councilmember Stewart?
I actually don't have a report this week.
Okay. All right. Moving from report then. Unless anybody else says, all right. Okay, moving from report, we're going to move on to the federal regulation regarding tractor trailers.
And I'll turn that over to Mr. Sugg, who is our legislative expert.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Moran, Council, and Mr. Interim City Manager Mike Sugg, Management Analyst for the city. So what's in front of you tonight is a letter. It's from a group called the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks, and they have asked that the city sign on to this letter to Congress, basically opposing any sort of legislation that would increase the size and weight limits of tractor trailers. So in tonight's agenda bill, there are materials that were provided by that representative from the coalition, as well as the letter on which they're asking for the city's support. So the legislative committee discussed this 2 weeks ago and recommended that it be presented to the full council for discussion. So with that said, I will go ahead and turn it over to the members of the legislative committee if they have anything further to add.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, so the concern that I have, so one of the things that we discussed at the legislative committee about this, and just for the folks in the audience, part of this is allowing triple tractor trailers. So I'm sure we've all seen sometimes the double dump trucks, but this would allow tractor trailers that have 3 trailers with just the 1 cab. And while there may be parts of the country where there's a lot of flat, open road, and that that may be appropriate, it may be efficient. I can't speak to that. We do have, through the city, a truck route, and it's very concerning to me that with these larger, heavier trucks, our infrastructure isn't built for that. They do require longer stopping distances, so they pose a safety hazard. They'll also slow down our already, people say the traffic's too slow. Well, I can guarantee you that at some of these lights, you have a truck like that, it's slow getting started, and it's gonna take up an intersection. So I just think that however we decide to move forward, we need, I believe, to put forth something to Congress letting them know that there has to be a way, again, for cities to be able to regulate this and not have the federal and government impose that these kinds of trucks can drive through a city like Sammamish. I can't even imagine some of our roundabouts, they'd just drive right over them. They'd never be able to get around them. So that.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, following on that, in the legislative committee, that was one of the major points. Citizens have been complaining in the past that just the double trucks have been tearing up a number of our roundabouts and causing damages. And so it would behoove us as a city to see if we can at least restrict them to our main arterials, and so to keep the traffic there. I know Issaquah has done stuff to keep trucks off of Front Street, and so in letting the legislator know that we should have some more control over the local traffic and what routes they are using would be beneficial.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Did anybody else? Because if no one else had any, if there is more discussion, please go ahead. Otherwise, we can make a motion.
Councilmember Ross for round one.
Thank you. I think it's an important issue, and safety is an important issue. And the only concern I have is we got this Thursday, and we're not experts on this issue. And I don't know who the coalition of COBT is, in fact, and whether what their level of credibility. So there's a learning curve, and that's what's the problem of bringing some of these non-city legislative issues forward. So in my search, for example, Madam City Clerk, if you can pull it up, I was searching to find out about COBT because I wanted to support it. It had a lot of merit in reading it. And then I found SHIFT, which effectively says, looking at modernizing the truck, the weight of the truck and so on, it will make roads safer, minimize congestion, takes more vehicles off the road, less driver miles, less fatigue, potentially less accidents. So there's certainly a counterbalance view. I don't know who's right, quite frankly. And so I would encourage all the citizens who feel strongly. I think we need to carry the message. I think Councilmember Stewart really raised an excellent point regarding trucks coming through our city. So I think we got to maybe have a more laser-focused feedback through our congressmen and congresswomen, and work it through that venue. I'm not sure this entity is the right vehicle for it. And I just don't want to pick and choose one coalition versus another coalition, but encourage and support the power of the people to raise these important issues.
Okay, next I have Councilmember Hornish, and then followed by Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I have some concerns about this as a discussion item, I guess, only because, I generally agree that we don't want the big trucks in Sammamish, and the double or triple trucks would not be appropriate in Sammamish. I don't know why this federal legislation, opposing federal legislation, is more important than other federal legislation, and it's just too much for us to try to be involved with federal legislation, state legislation. We need to focus on the city legislation. I don't know enough about this particular federal legislation as it's being proposed. I'd be very surprised that local communities couldn't still have some restrictions, but it doesn't even talk about being any of that. So I don't have enough information. It's too loose, and I think it's above and beyond kind of what we need to be thinking about as city council members. That's it.
Okay. I'm going to start round two unless, okay, round two, and we'll start with Councilmember Stewart.
Well, given the damage that this could do to our infrastructure and the safety issues, I would like to make a motion that we learn more about this federal legislation and ensure that we can, in fact, maintain local control to restrict them coming through our city. So while I appreciate that we can't take on everything, if this legislation does in fact somehow supersede our ability to regulate these trucks going through our city, I think it is of paramount concern to the city and to our citizens. I can't even imagine a triple truck driving down 228th as kids are crossing the street to go to Pine Lake Middle School, and what happens on a rainy morning when they can't stop in time. So I would like to ask that we dig deeper. I don't know if that's I guess I'd make a motion that we direct the city manager to ask the staff to dig into this and ensure that we can maintain local control, and if not, to bring that back so that we can provide feedback to Congress.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second discussion on the motion.
And I'll just add that I'm fine not signing on with any particular coalition, that we could just put forth feedback on our own, that we don't have to sign on with any particular group. I'm totally fine with that.
Okay, so now we are solely on the motion, and we are Councilmember Ritchie, followed by Councilmember Hornish.
Thank you. So more of what Councilmember Stewart said, I think it's more important to direct kind of taking what Councilmember Hornish said and taking it even more so, I think, and that is to say, how does this particular legislation or this particular issue affect the city of Sammamish? And if it doesn't affect the city of Sammamish because the roads that we have here, the truck routes that we have here, are not the routes that are to be considered by these six-axle, 91,000 pound, whatever, then I don't think it's worthwhile us talking about it, right? And I agree with that. But if it is something that is going to affect our city, I think my ask of the staff, my amendment or whatever you want to call it, would be to have the staff actually come back and tell us exactly what part of this proposed legislation would affect the city of Sammamish, and maybe not just the city of Sammamish, maybe what roads around the city of Sammamish, would it affect 202, and how, what are they expecting on 90? What are they expecting on 405? I mean, that kind of awareness as to what it is we're getting ourselves into, rather than, and if it's not available, it's not available. I get it, but what does this mean for us in our region and in our city? That would be my ask of the staff. Thanks.
Councilmember Hornish.
I think by studying it, it diffuses our focus. I think there are multiple potential federal legislation that's being proposed that may impact city of Sammamish. And if we let one group come in and say, hey, ours is most important, you should focus on ours, that defocuses our focus on the city of Sammamish.
Okay, so I'm going to weigh on this, and then we're going to go to, I guess it would be, Okay, I'm going to weigh in on what I learned today. So I did a little bit of research today, and I actually called a relative who actually is in the trucking business, so from the Midwest. And he kind of laughed at me and said, well, why don't you look at the cities around you, Karen? And he said, because you've got somebody out there who's not even building warehouses now. And he said, and it doesn't have to do with, I have to remember, he said it doesn't have to do with, it's primarily the, it's how many trucks are on the roads, how many times that truck is going through that is causing the damage on your roads. And so he said you need to read through the legislation carefully. And he said there's numerous groups in numerous states that are doing this. And he said so, and they're all claiming the same thing. So I do think that we don't want to sign on to any one group. And we also don't want to scatter the staff off in every which direction. And with that, I'm going to send this over to where our light is, and that would be our city manager.
I was going to suggest to you that why don't you allow us to, we'll make a call to AWC, see what knowledge they have on this and maybe what direction they can provide for us. And if it's something that we really need to weigh in on, we'll get back to you either through email or be back on another agenda.
That's a good move. So you have to withdraw your motion.
Actually, technically, you can't once it's been seconded, but, so I'm not sure how we deal with that. Can anyone? All right. I'll withdraw my motion if we can allow the city manager to get back to us. I just think from a public safety standpoint, public safety is our #1 job as city council, so we need to know how, if or how this impacts us.
Just as a point of information, this came to the legislative via staff, not something from the legislative.
Correct.
Okay, so you could change your motion to state that we're going to send it to Tom.
Okay, I'll modify my motion. How about that? I move that we allow the city manager to contact AWC and do a little bit of digging and come back to us and let us know if and how this may impact the city of Sammamish, particularly from a safety perspective.
We have a first and second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Perfect. Any opposed? Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, now next on our agenda. Okay, next on our agenda is the city manager report.
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor, councilors, I noticed my 5-year pin just turned 6. Actually, I have just a couple of things to report to you this evening. I'm going to turn to Mr. Suggs initially because we have a letter we would like to get your approval on, which is recommended to us by our lobbyists, I believe. So
Correct.
I'll let you explain that to them.
Yeah, so one of the City Council's legislative priorities for this year was to end the double taxation that occurs when a park district overlaps with the city, which is the case in our neighborhoods Aldara and Montaigne. So House Bill 2044 was introduced by Representative Sen to provide the city with options to de-annex that portion of the city from the park district. 2044 just recently passed out of both chambers, so it is now on its way to the governor's desk for a signature. And our lobbyist recommended that the mayor send a letter to the governor urging him to sign the bill into law. So what you have in front of you is that letter basically asking that he sign the legislation into law. And we are looking for your direction as to whether that is something, whether or not that is something we want to sign.
Karen, may I say something?
Yes, we will go to Councilmember Ritchie, then Councilmember Valderrama.
Before I make the motion, I just want to point out that our management analyst, Mike Sugg, found out that, and this is from Representative Sen specifically, that essentially this is the double taxation issue, this is the double taxation issue. I just want to call out when you do great things. The staff, we run over you guys all the time completely inappropriately. You specifically found this out. Mike, tell me where I'm wrong here. Larry, please help me. But essentially what happened was Representative Sen and the legislation that they pulled and they were trying to fix this double taxation issue was going down the pike. Legislation had been introduced. Everyone thought they were doing the right thing. And our management analyst, Mike Sugg, kept digging and found out that what we were doing, the path we were on, was not going to cover the neighborhoods, the reason we were trying to do this. And were it not for you doing this, were it not for you searching and finding and keeping digging at it, this would have all been for nothing. And I know Representative Sen pointed that out directly, and I want you to know that she knows you and that she was grateful that you pointed that out. And this is when things work really well when we work together. So thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it. So having said that, I move we adopt the letter and have our mayor sign on our behalf.
Second.
We have a first and a second and discussion. Okay, and we will have Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, just as a reminder, this is one of our city priorities that we had taken out of the top 4 that we had taken to Olympia. It was acted efficiently in support by our representatives. And just to add on to it, that the original bill we were hoping to ride was Monroe's bill that they were doing. And what was even more important than even finding the error that the wording would not have suited, and the lobbying for it was working with our lobbyists to counteract the Parks Commissions because they were ready to kill this bill. That was one piece. The other piece, which was pretty impressive, is staff turned around the change in the language needed by our representative Sen to submit this within 24 hours, that she needed new language to be able to modify, and staff was there. So I commend Mike in particular, but all the staff that were able to turn it around on this and some others as well. So thank you.
A couple other items for you.
We have to vote.
Well, we got to
I'm
still
sorry.
do the vote.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. No more discussion. So all in favor of having the mayor sign the letter, that will go forward to Governor Inslee. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? It goes forth.
I have sent to you the copy of the letter that Republic Services has sent to us requesting a opening of the franchise to talk about rate in regards to the increasing cost of recycling. So with your permission, I'll put that on your next work session for you to discuss. I think you do need to think about anything else that you would like to talk about in that franchise as you reopen that. I think the other thing that you may want to talk about is whether you wish to have a rate study to look at this request. And that's something you may also think about partnering with some of your other cities with that I think are faced or have received similar types of requests. So you'll be seeing that coming at you. I just want to kind of get you thinking on that, and staff will be able to brief you on those issues and some of the things you may want to talk about. Another item I wish to talk about is with our records management program that we added in, that's in the budget this year. We had planned to hire a staff member or a project manager to run that program, and we've been unable to find that type of individual, so we'll be looking at a consultant to assist us with that, and Ms. Anderson's well in the process of doing that. However, to do this, it is going to take some staff time, and we need to free up some people so we can manage that. And so what I am asking you for is to approve a half-time person for the city clerk's office to do passports. We work on passports roughly 8 hours a week. We charge $35 for that process. We do about 800 of those per year. And so this should be more than self-sustaining service. The flip side that we could do there, of course, is to not do passports here and let folks go to either Bellevue, Issaquah, or Redmond, but it is a service and it is convenient for folks for us to continue to do that here. And I think we could probably even process more if we could just get free to do that. If we're going to do that, the U.S. Department of State requires that the passport agents to be a permanent employee of the city. So that's what the request is for. Should be, I'm going to guess, that cost for us is about $10,000, $12,000 a year. I think we'll more than recover that cost through these fees.
Okay, we have a question here. Actually, it looks like we have two. First, we have Councilmember Hornish.
Yeah, Mr. City Manager, I'm just curious, do we know of how many passports that we process in City Hall are citizens of Sammamish, or are people traveling from outside of Sammamish to get passports?
I'll let Ms. Anderson answer that one.
Councilmember Hornish, they're usually local residents, or they're coming from nearby, not Kirkland, but Redmond and Issaquah.
Do we have a percentage of that, or do you have a gut feel?
No, from my experience, that it's mostly our residents. I'm trying to think of how I could even get that number, because all we're really doing is accepting the application. And so the only records we keep are the number of applications that we've processed and the names of the people we did them for.
Okay. City Manager, tell me again how many applications we run normally. 800, did you say? Or?
About 800 a year.
I just want to do that math. So that's 28,000 for 12,000 cost. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, next question would be Councilmember Stewart.
So I can tell you from personal experience, we just needed to renew our kids' passports, and the city of Sammamish was booked out for several months, so we ended up having to go to Issaquah. Not that that was terribly inconvenient, but if it's revenue neutral, or we might even make a little money on it, I think it's a great service to be able to keep it right here in the city and allow people to just come here. And to your point, if we can bring someone on and we could actually extend those hours so that it isn't several months out to just get an appointment, I think that would be great. So I would like to make a motion that we approve a half-time person to process passports here in the city of Sammamish.
I'd like to second that because I think that is a service that we should have.
Yeah.
And discussion. Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand how it's revenue neutral if we're only processing 800. And so that's about, when you take out the weekends and that, about 3 a day. You had wanted to get them part-time, which I could understand, but if there's a requirement that this person be full-time, or it's not.
We only do this 8 hours a week is what we've devoted for that. I mean, we could expand that. We'd probably do more, but we're not planning on doing that at the present time unless that demand would be there. And in that case, I think once again, your revenue is going to be higher than what your cost on that.
And just to clarify too, the employee has to be permanent, not full-time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, actually, I got one. Sorry. Can you clarify what the difference between permanent and full-time?
Yeah, you can be a permanent part-time employee.
They can't be a consultant, is what you're saying.
Right. We can't do it by contract.
Yeah, you're an employee of the city, but you don't have to be a full-time employee of the city.
And just to clarify then, the fully loaded costs with other benefits or anything for a permanent employee on top of that 12,000 cost that you mentioned?
If it was full-time, you would have the benefit package. That's why we're not looking at doing this at that level. We're looking, again, to maintain this as a part-time position.
Okay, got it. Part-time permanent.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor and no more discussion. So the motion is?
To approve a part-time employee to process passports.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All those who oppose, say nay. And motion passes.
And the final thing I have this evening is one of the only skill that I think I have, as I realized a long time ago, I'm not a very smart person. And what really, I appreciate the kind words you had for me this evening, but really my ability to do the job here and do it well is a reflection on the staff you have. And I will say this is an excellent staff. I think Mr. Sugg is just one of the many fine folks you have working here. Your department heads do an excellent job day in and day out making this city function. And again, I appreciate the time and the support that you've given me while I've been here. And Madam Deputy Mayor, that concludes my report.
Great. Well, I do want to say that there is one other thing that's on your report that I do want to highlight because I liked it very much, which was the moving to 2 meetings per month.
If any of you would like to chat, there are several things I could recommend to you. I think that might make you operate a little better. That would be one. I think if you could find a way to free up your Tuesdays, I think there's a way you could consolidate your work sessions so that you'd have those prior to the meetings, and therefore I think it'd make your job a little simpler, even though those meetings may be a little bit longer. But you have shown that you have the ability to have long meetings, so I don't think that's going to be a big issue there.
Well, I hope we do have those discussions because I do like that idea very much. Okay, well, thank you for your report, and again, you will be very much missed. We have a question by Councilmember Ross.
Yeah, on that subject, that's contained in our council rules. So might be a great opportunity for the council to look at the council rules and update as necessary. So do everything at once rather than just one piece here, one piece there. I'd encourage us to take a look and maybe a session to work council rules.
Okay. I'll
Just
pass
as a
that
point
along
of
to Rick, too.
information, that's normally at the council retreats that we do that.
Yeah, and
That's
update
one of
committee
the
rules and,
actions.
yep.
Yeah.
Snowmageddon. You got a Snowmageddon golf ball in there too, Larry. And a ransomware golf ball and.
So, Mr. City Manager, do we have an executive session needed this evening?
No, ma'am. You had indicated you wanted to move that until you have a full council.
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Well, I would second that, so. We shall adjourn.
Oh, you got
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Adjourn.